So welcome everyone. Welcome to Nitin Das podcast for today. Thank you for joining us. So I'm so honoured and excited to be joined by Ranjana Ghatak today. So Ranjana is an accomplished and talented vocalist and teacher in classical and devotional Indian music. She produced her solo album in 2020 and has performed internationally. She sang at the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games in July 2022 and recently performed on BBC Sunday Morning Live. Ranjana has also launched a vocal membership programme teaching North Indian vocal music, where you have the opportunity to be part of her community. So today she's here to talk to us about unlocking the power of the voice through singing. So welcome, Ranjana. It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So my first question, I'm sure all viewers will be wanting to know this, is if you could just share a bit more about how your journey started with singing and how you knew this was your path.
So I was very lucky to be born into a family of musicians. My parents are, they actually met through music, and my mum spotted that I had an interest in singing. I was actually very quiet as a child, but I always loved singing. And she felt that I had some kind of ability that she saw something in me. So she put me in for classes when I was about 4. I was born and raised in London, and at that time there weren't any master musicians of the Indian classical tradition. But luckily there were community musicians, and so I started learning with she was like an aunt to me, but Tripti Das, she's passed away now, and she had studied classical music, so she was my first route into the tradition. And then I started learning with other teachers here in London, and then I went to the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, which was an institute of Indian culture. So it's thanks to my mum really and my dad that I started the journey with singing. And then it was probably when I was a teenager that I started to develop a real interest and passion for the subject. And it came to me later, knowing that it was my path in terms of my work in the world. It wasn't until to sort of 2009, 2010, around then. So I was in my 30s at that point. I had worked in offices for 10 years and was just through that process of trying things out and then realizing that I wanted to work with my voice.
That's amazing, really wonderful. So you've had a lot of different teachers that, you know, have influenced you in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And just on that, who would you say is your greatest inspiration in classical Indian singing?
Definitely I call him my guru, Pandit Ajoy Chakabarty. I started learning with him when I was around 21, just straight after university. I went over to his music school in Kolkata for 3 months. And I started listening to him as a teenager as well. And I heard him live in London, and I was in complete awe of what he was able to do, both technically, but also there was just so much beauty in what he was creating with his voice. So he's definitely my greatest inspiration.
That's beautiful. And so you keep in touch with him, and
yes,
students from the school. That's nice.
I've started learning with his senior disciple, and I keep in touch with Guruji, and he's also coming on tour to the UK, which is wonderful, in July. So I haven't seen him for about 2 years, so I'm looking forward to seeing him again.
That's great. And so what forms of Indian classical singing do you feel have influenced you the most?
So there are kind of 3 different areas that I listen to and study, I would say. I don't perform all 3. So there's the pure Indian classical form, and that form is called khayal, which is a Persian word for imagination. And so that's where, if you go to a concert or listen to a recording, it's like a longer unfolding of a raga. A raga is seen as like a musical personality or a musical being. and it has a time of day connected to it and phrases connected to it, and we study the ragas through studying it with our teachers and gurus. And so the pure classical form has a slightly different throwing of the voice. It can be slightly heavier throwing of the voice. Then we have the semi-classical form, which is the most popular, is Thumri. And then we have the devotional forms, which are called bhajans. So I predominantly perform more Thumris and bhajans. I don't perform pure classical, like a full rag. I might perform maybe a sort of one or two compositions within that form. But the slow to medium to fast tempo, that form, I don't perform, but I study. So all three have definitely influenced me in terms of my singing. And at the moment, I'm kind of going into a deeper dive of study of the Thumri form and understanding how that works. And there's been some incredible Thumri singers over, the last few decades. So that has also definitely influenced me. It's a very emotional form of singing. The poetry has more focus. And there's exploration of the phrases of the raga as well. As less rules, I would say, in terms of pure classical music. But the focus is really bringing out the beauty and the emotion of the words. And a lot of them are rooted in the stories of Radha and Krishna, the different love stories.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean the poetry in itself is so much beauty and depth within that, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I know you've also had some kind of participation in contemporary music. So could you tell us a bit more about how you came into contemporary music and other forms of singing that you do as well?
Yeah. So I think it all came from being born and raised here. So obviously I did music at school. I was very lucky with my music teacher. He was actually one of the main reasons why I took Indian music further. He encouraged me to bring my Indian music into the school, and I did music GCSE and used Indian music for my composition work and for my performance work. And alongside that, I was, of course, studying other forms of music, and I was in the choir as well. And then it was later on, around my early 30s, I was spending a lot of time going to lots of live concerts, and then I was going to a lot of jazz concerts. I had a lot of friends that were in the jazz music world as well, and that it was just this natural kind of integration that happened where just through spending time with each other, let's have a play, and then we'd start experimenting. So I was in a couple of bands where I still did my Indian singing, but we were kind of kind of exploring that sound with electronic music, with jazz music, with drums, different kinds of elements. And then that continued. I worked with Liran Donin, who was my producer for my last album, and he has a background in improvisatory music, jazz music. And so that was a sort of exploration of what my voice could sound like in these different worlds, because I felt very comfortable kind of merging and jumping in between worlds, as it were, through having so many cultures around me, as well as going to India and feeling very connected to my roots there too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And your focus has always been on singing, or do you also play instruments too?
Singing has been the main focus. I play the harmonium as well, and the tanpura, which I use for my practice. I've started to learn the tabla very, very slowly, but that's more for my own internal development as a musician.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And so that's fantastic as a background into how you came into singing, and the influence of contemporary music, and exposure to different types of music, as you mentioned. So now we're just going to turn a bit more onto the title about unlocking the power of your voice. So how do you feel, or how do you sense that singing can unlock the power of your voice? And are you able just to share some examples of this in practice?
Yeah. So I think Using our voice is something that we're all learning to do across our life, and I think some people are more connected to their voices than others. And I think there are so many benefits and areas that kind of sprout out of singing. So I think using our voice, in one, it connects us to our voice, particularly if we're not used to using our voice or speaking up. It has one of the key exercises that I teach, and that is a core part of Indian music, or particularly in the classical and devotional tradition, is to sing long notes. And through singing long notes, you develop stamina, and you develop a stillness within the voice. And we don't really hear singing a sustained long note in so many other forms of music, but it's such a core part of this practice. And I find, through doing it myself and through witnessing my students go through this practice as well, that it really develops a sense of calm to the system. It's very kind of, I feel, I'm not an expert on this, but I do feel it's very regulating to be able to do that as well. And through small and regular practice of this, you develop this strength and stamina in your voice that in turn also gives you confidence. So this is just one of many practices that I do to develop the culture of my voice. And so I think these exercises develop confidence, I would say, and then in turn connect to an internal power. And I think, people can, even if people don't have so much time, doing a few small practices on a regular basis can have a very powerful effect on themselves and in how they feel within themselves as well. It's very nuanced. There's so many elements to it, and it's not just one thing. Of course, working with the voice, there's a lot of internal work that's also required, I think, to be able to feel comfortable using your voice. If you're going to go down the sort of understanding of the voice from a healing angle. Mm-hmm. But in terms of, even just if somebody wants to connect to their creative side, if you take away the other elements but connect to their creativity, particularly if they're in a world or working in a world where they don't have that around their day to day, I think the voice is such a powerful way of doing that. And it's within our body. We don't need to go out to go and work with it. It's something that we can do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's amazing, isn't it? It's the one I think it's a Sufi saying, this only instrument given by God that we have, we can carry with us always. So,
yeah.
And you mentioned the longer sustain, the longer tones. Do you think there's a relationship with the kind of breathing exercises there to help with the voice?
Yeah, so deeper breathing is required and gets developed through doing that practice. So when I first started singing long notes, I could maybe sing a note for 10 seconds. Now when I'm in a regular practice, I can maybe sing for 20, 25 seconds. It's longer on the lower notes, of course, than the higher, but it's something that can develop over time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so practice is key, is what I'm hearing. Like a lot of things, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, of course, in any classical tradition across the world, it can be something that's really, really focused on a lot that people don't always warm to. They might not have a healthy relationship to the word practice. I definitely haven't had a healthy relationship to the word practice, but I've started to find my own a healthy relationship for myself with it, to find a way that works for you.
Yeah. Okay. And then just to touch upon another area, just be interested to hear your thoughts on the use of intuition and improvisation in singing.
Mm-hmm. I think it's something that comes very naturally to everybody, regardless of what form we sing. I think sometimes I've experienced, when I've been around people who have learnt a form of music in a very fixed way, they sometimes find it difficult to get in touch with their intuitive or improvisatory expression sometimes, and that's a journey as well in itself. In the Indian devotional and classical traditions, improvisation is a part of the expression. And how I've understood it to be is that it's best to understand the form of a composition, understand the raga, or understand the melodies really, really well. And once you have that in your system, then the improvisatory expression starts to come naturally, because you have a sense of where the voice can move. So it's not necessarily free improv where you can sing any note. There are some forms where we can do that. But in raga music, you're still keeping to a certain set of notes or a certain way, the phrases of the notes, they are moving in a particular way. But through that regular singing of the phrases and listening to the phrases, then you'll start to naturally be able to improvise within those and improvise with the words too. And I think it's a very important part of music in general. And I think the more that we understand the placements of the notes, which is something that I teach and that I study myself through, again, exercises of just really knowing the placements of the notes, the more that we have that in the system, I find that it becomes easier to improvise and connect to our intuition, because we have we have a sense of where our voice is moving.
So when someone has the fundamental structure and grounding, and they're naturally just able to go into that flow of kind of improvised singing.
Yes.
What you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, particularly more for the style that I do, but there are of course plenty of people who are naturally very have an intuitive and improvisatory approach to how they sing, and I think that's incredible as well. It can be done without a study as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
form, I think.
Yeah, I asked that because I teach sound healing with the voice practitioner courses, and there we very much focus on kind of the intention and the frequency, intention behind the frequency that we're giving for healing, and there is kind of a sense of intuition. So it's really interesting to hear kind of, a bit more about the improvisation. So thank you.
Yeah.
And then just kind of looking from a broader perspective, how do you see singing evolving just over time in the UK and abroad? I know there's various influences, trends and things. So do you have a sense of where it's going at the moment, or if there's any particular influences you want to refer to?
I mean, it's difficult to say for the whole, I can only speak from my, like you said, from my angle, I guess. I think we're going in a positive direction, in the sense that I think there is this genuine desire to learn from each other and to understand each other, and this kind of shared vision. And so, it's been going, sort of started probably more so from the 60s onwards, but this sort of different cultures living in different places, through that then we get to learn about different types of music. So I notice, even say within my student base or people that come to see my concerts, it's a very mixed audience. It's not only Indian people, it's mixed in terms of heritage. And also what I think is wonderful is there are a lot of second and third generation Indians, British Indians or British Asians also coming to see my concerts, because it's something that they want to connect to in terms of their heritage and culture. So I see that in terms of singing, that people are wanting to learn different types of singing that are from different parts of the world or different styles. I see in India, when I go there or when I speak to my friends there, a lot of my friends are classical singers there, and they also sing other styles. One thing that I think is really wonderful, one of the many things that is so incredible about Guruji, Pandit Ajoy Chakabarty, is he has a very open-minded approach to singing. So he sings the pure classical form as well as devotional, Bengali, these other forms of Indian music, and he encourages his students to do that too, as long as it's at a good standard. You know, he keeps the standards very high for his students in a good way. And so I've seen some of his students also sing, you know, old pop songs, or, you know, rock songs, or you know, other forms from the Western world. So I think that's a wonderful thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to perform everything, but just to have that open-minded approach to what we do sing. And you know, I've taken part in courses and creative leadership courses and things over here in the UK, and through that you get to learn so many different styles and improvise and connect your voice in different ways. And I think having that approach is very supportive to the world that we live in, particularly in the world we live in. I think we need to have more of that approach of holding hands rather than being separate. And at the same time, there is also, I think, which goes across time, this desire to go into a deeper form of study, whatever form that it is that you're doing. So I think it's both. I think there are people that are really going into a lot of depth with what they're studying, and at the same time, I also see a lot of people branching out and opening up their worlds to different forms, which I think hopefully will have a cumulative and positive effect on the world around us.
So obviously you have the focus of people coming for you know, concerts or performances where, you know, where the focus is singing, but there's also where it's as an accompaniment, so maybe singing alongside, associated with dancing, or maybe other instruments, you know, just kind of different combinations. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you also do or interested in?
As in singing as accompaniment, you mean?
Yeah.
I have done a lot of dance projects. I've always loved to dance. I never studied it myself. Well, that's a lie. I did do ballet for many years, from like the age of 4 to 14. So it was actually quite a long time that I studied ballet. And I did actually really enjoy it. So I have accompanied for Odissi dance, which is a temple dance from India. Very, very beautiful. And I have done some accompaniment with Ghatak. I haven't done so much recently. I think I've been more interested in studying the forms that I mentioned earlier and expressing that. So, but there's definitely so much to learn from doing both.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll just move on now, just to discuss a bit more about the benefits. What do you see as the main benefits of singing for individuals, for groups of people, and also just the wider community kind of coming together and singing? You know, also creating a sense of harmony. In those kind of three categories, what do you sense are the main benefits that people can get from either, you know, coming to it without having any former, you know, training, and just starting the process, starting their journey in singing?
I think for an individual, there are many benefits. I think it also depends on why you're coming to it. So some people come to music, to singing, as it's something that they want to develop in their own musicianship and perform, and others go to it from a place of connecting to their creativity and their well-being, and they don't have that other element to it. I think when you know, some of the many benefits I find with my singing is a sense of well-being, definitely, a sense of peace. There is definitely a lot of frustration that comes with it too, because when you're studying anything, I think it would be wrong for me not to talk about that side too. But I think that comes with anything that we're learning in depth. But through those frustrations, we unlock a deeper capacity for growth. And of course, through the practice, as an individual, we're connecting to our voice, we're developing our voice, we're strengthening our voice. And so that can have many different effects in terms of our confidence, how we just literally walk through the world, just standing up and walking. We're connecting to our body in that way, when connecting to our voice. I think that has a very powerful impact. I do think it's important for people that are singing regularly to look after their bodies. That's something I didn't do for a long time, and that's something that I'm learning to do more now. And I see that when I do go to the gym and move my body, I feel much more in my body when I'm singing, because singing has this quality that can just kind of keep you going upwards. So we need to be very grounded in our body when we are singing as well. That's very important. And I think as groups, there's a sense of community, of, it's so powerful when we hear a group of people singing together and also singing in a group. Whenever I run classes in person, it's so much more powerful than, of course, doing them online, because we can hear each other, and having a collection of voices coming together has such an impact. And then, group singing can also happen in the form of workshops or, at public events, those kinds of things. I think if there was more group singing, we would live in a more peaceful world, that's for sure. And yeah, I just think it has such a healing effect and such a powerful effect that I think, just more singing projects around the world and the wider community, like you mentioned, would be a really wonderful thing. I experienced a little bit of that in Scotland about 10 years ago. I was part of a project called Big Big Sing, and I was asked to compose a raga inspired piece. So just to quickly mention again what a raga is, if people aren't aware. So the word raga means that which colors the mind. And a raga technically is made up of a minimum of 5 notes and a maximum of 8 notes. And it's essentially, it's like a musical personality. That's how I've been taught to think of them. And so we get to learn them through understanding phrases. So we sing maybe 8 or 9 key phrases of a rag to really get a sense of what it sounds like. And then through that, we learn compositions within that particular rag, and we improvise within it. And so I was asked to write a piece for choir that was based on a raga. So I wrote a piece for 2 parts. And the idea was that anyone could sing it from any background, that you didn't need to have an Indian music background to be able to sing it. So what was wonderful is then I saw this large choir sing this composition, and they felt so happy singing it, and then I went and led workshops around the UK to large groups of people, and there was just such an openness to sing it, and I could see through all of the different pieces that everybody was singing from around the world, that there was such a positive effect. So I think, group singing is a really wonderful thing.
So it really kind of bringing people together, isn't it, in harmony with that kind of one voice, and building community really through your voice, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's really amazing. And so you mentioned the ragas, the North Indian vocal tradition. There's some differences there between the South Indian, isn't there? Have you touched upon the Carnatic or the South Indian vocal at all, or
I haven't studied it a lot, a little bit, as in I've understood the very basic differences. So we have the same notes and we say the same note names. There might be slight difference in the pronunciation. Like we have sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa. I've noticed in the Carnatic tradition they'll say re instead of re. So there are, a little bit of that slight differences. The ornamentation is different. So there's still this use of like the fast movements of the voice, but the way the ornamentation is used is different in the Carnatic tradition. Some of the rags have different names. They might be the same rag, but a different name. And then they, of course, have their own set of rags that we don't have. So I haven't studied it in depth. I'd love to learn more. And I have a couple of students that have come from the Carnatic music tradition and are now studying Hindustani music. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, all these different kind of systems of music and singing. I had some exposure when I did my Bharatanatyam diploma in dancing, and then I also studied some Hindustani vocal, so it was nice to see, the differences. And like you know, I had so much influence from my parents. I would kind of wake up hearing my dad playing the tabla, my mum singing her sarega scales and the sitar. So it was lovely musical influence, and I think it does have an effect on you. As you grow older, having that influence at a young age, which you mentioned, at the beginning. So that's amazing. Yeah. Brilliant. So thank you so much. And it would be interesting if you could just share a bit more about your your singing courses, your workshops that you offer. And I know that you also have launched a membership, creating community through voice and through singing. So did you want to just touch upon those areas?
Yeah. So I've set up a vocal membership program called Swaranjali. I set it up coming up to a year ago. It's nearly coming up to its first birthday. And it came from a place where I had started to offer my own classes online that kind of came out through the lockdown. I was living in the States prior to that and teaching over there. And then when I decided to sort of be here, I set up my own classes, and students were coming back for each term. So I decided to set up this membership program so that there was a container for people to learn across the year. This is the kind of music that definitely has a long-term vision in mind. It's not, something that we do for a few weeks and then stop. I mean, of course, people have the freedom to do that if it's not for them, but generally to learn it, we just keep learning continuously. So that's why I wanted to set up the membership, so that people could have this container to learn within. And through it, I have a foundation level, which is for people that are completely new to it. And I have 2 sessions a month. I have a level 1 and a level 2. Generally, I say for level 1, you need to have a basic understanding of Sargam, the Indian notation system. And for level 2, a minimum of 2 years of study. And so through that, I'm kind of offering workshops and classes pretty much nearly every week, really. And I have 3 terms with live classes, weekly classes. And the other months I run workshops. I have guest musicians that come as well. So next month I have my guru sister, Aisha Mukherjee. She's an incredible singer. She's going to be teaching about chand, which is about how to rhythmically play with the notes. And I'm going to also be doing a guided listening session. So playing a classical recording and explaining what's happening through the process. Because of course, once even though we're learning, we don't always understand what's happening because it's such a deep form of music. And I also, there are monthly exercise classes through the membership. So I have one this evening. So we'll do an hour of vocal exercises together online. And I also then through that do in-person sessions as well. So in May, we're going to be meeting for 2 days in person. Last October, we did a 4-day in person, and I had students come over from the States and Scotland and Cornwall. So it's been really lovely. It's a really lovely group of people, and I suggest if people are interested to connect with me, and we can arrange a call and see if this is the right fit.
So if someone did want to come for singing lessons, is there more benefit in joining kind of the membership and being part of the community, or as opposed to kind of one-on-one individual sessions with you? What was the best approach?
I think it depends on the individual. In the past, I haven't had as much capacity to take on too many private students. And at the same time, I also find that I teach more through the membership. There's a lot more material that is covered, as well as because it has a shape to it, I'm able to, and I find that people generally learn better when they have a sense of community with them and support. So, what has started to happen now is students are messaging each other, they're spending time with each other, they're checking in on each other. And that makes such a huge difference in the learning journey. That's something that I have really struggled with myself, because I, have generally had my classes over in India for the last 20 years. So if I've not been able to go every year to keep that momentum and that motivation going by myself, you don't have all those musicians around you, can be challenging. So that's something that I feel very excited about with this membership, is that people are genuinely really connecting well with each other. And I think that's bringing a lot more enthusiasm to the learning process. And then I do have a few handful of slots available for private sessions as well. And sometimes people come with a specific project in mind or something in mind. I've had people that are recording an album, or they're working on a particular piece of repertoire, or somebody that wanted to understand the movements better, ornamentation better, and just wanted to focus on that. We did 4 sessions on that. So it depends on the individual.
And just one last question on the membership. If someone, are there any kind of prerequisites to join? Do you need any kind of experience or training in vocal, or is it just open to anyone and everyone, even if they don't have any prior training?
Yeah, so for the foundation level, that's the one where you don't have to have had prior training. I'm actually running an intro workshop on the 29th of March. It's in the morning. It's a Saturday morning, and it's online. For that, nobody, no prior experience is needed. For the others, some prior experience is needed, which is why I suggest speaking to me first, and then I can guide whoever I speak to on what the best route is moving forward. And I am planning on having some pre-recorded courses available soon as well.
That sounds wonderful. And are there any other kind of collaborations or projects that you're working on that you'd like to mention today?
Yeah, so I have 2 performance projects that I'm working on. One is a solo project, which is based on tumris and devotional compositions, and that's with esraj, which is a bowed stringed instrument similar to a sarangi. It was very popular in Bengal. I discovered that my grand uncle used to play it and sing as well. So the esraj, the tabla, harmonium, and the harp. And I also discovered that the harp was also played in India. As an ancient instrument, but I don't know why it stopped being played. But it was more similar to if you've seen a Burmese harp, it's a smaller harp. It's not like the larger classical harps that we see here.
Yeah.
But it was used in India, and I did a residency in 2022 and worked with a folk harp musician, and it felt very natural to sing with her. So now I'm working with this incredible harpist called Céline Saout. She's from France, and she's a classical harpist, and she also is an improviser. And so we're doing a project together with those instruments. So I should have some dates to announce for later in the year on that. And I also have a duo with a folk singer called Iona Lane. I met her on that same residency. We have an EP out, and we're starting to perform more together. So. Yeah.
Amazing. I've seen there's a lot of interest now in kind of harp music, and I also have used harp for my gong sound bath meditations, and I've come across Burmese harp, and it's such a beautiful sounds that that come from the harp.
Yeah,
definitely.
And
so is there anything else that you want to mention in terms of projects, or those are the key focus for the moment?
I think those are the main ones. I think in terms of if anyone's interested in learning, then come to the workshop on the 29th. That would be a good one to come to.
Okay. So we will be putting details of how you can get in touch with Ranjana and all her links, accompanying the video. So we're coming kind of towards the end of our time together. Is there, what would you say is your key message that you'd like to leave with our viewers today?
I would say that if you're curious to sing more and connect with your voice, then do it. That's my main message, really. I think to, to just really harness the power of music in general through listening to more music and connecting with your voice or learning an instrument, whichever one feels the most natural to you. I think we live in a time of so much distraction and so much noise, social media, TV, all of the things that I've been attempting to spend less time on. And I think creating more space for something creative and using your hands or using your voice can just have such a powerful effect on ourselves and in turn the world around us.
Absolutely. And you mentioned connecting with, our voice. What is the best way that you recommend people to do that?
It can be simply like on a very, very simple level, just start singing along to things. If you're listening to something on the radio, or if there's a song you like, just start with singing along to something and see how that feels. And then if there's a style or if there's something that you're interested in or drawn to, then you can then look at, of course, going for having lessons or joining a choir. There's so many different ways that we can connect with our voice in a way that feels meaningful to us.
Mm-hmm. And maybe perhaps if people aren't open to singing, maybe they can try humming. I know there's a lot of sometimes I do it when I'm not even aware that I'm doing it, humming, and it's kind of bringing us in a state of harmony and balance. So would you recommend that too for those?
Definitely. Humming's great. Any way of just regularly connecting with the voice, I think, is a really good thing.
Yeah, so it's a kind of authentic expression of ourselves, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Within our sound, it's almost our sound, our sonic energetic signature of who we are, and the first thing that we came in was with our voice. So so to connect in that way, as Ranjana was saying, would be really, really good idea, really useful for everybody. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wish to say?
No, I think that's it. Thank you for having me, and it's lovely to speak to you and your audience.
No, thank you for coming, and would actually would absolutely love it if you could perhaps end just with sharing a snippet of your favorite song. And before we do so, I'll just share that when I first heard Ranjana sing, I was absolutely speechless. It's beautiful voice, angelic voice coming, and it really, really did take my breath away. So,
wow, when was that?
Oh, it's a long time ago, but I've been listening since. So,
wow.
Just on that, I know you've produced your solo album. Do you have any thoughts for releasing any more?
Yes, so I will be releasing material for both of those new projects that I mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just stay tuned.
Stay tuned, yeah. I mean, the album that I released in 2020, I didn't produce that. That was produced by Liran Donin. And then since then, 2 other EPs have been released. One is a EP with a composer in Los Angeles called Juhi Bansal, and that's called Women's Stories. Her Stories, and that was influenced by hearing women's stories. And we also asked the community to share stories of prominent women in their life. So that was a response to that. And then the EP with Iona Lane called Cove, that was released the summer of 23. So I will have new material coming out soon.
Okay. So another question's actually just come to me. You mentioned before about the importance of looking after yourself and your voice, obviously, your singing, and the importance of grounding. Can you share what are your practices for grounding? How do you do that for yourself?
I think simple things like just making sure that I go for a walk in the day. I currently live by myself and I work a lot from home unless I'm out performing, so I can very easily just stay indoors. So just going for walks, and I've joined the gym as well, so that's made a huge difference in just being able to sit for longer when I actually practice as well. My body feels like it has the strength to do that. So because it, requires strength to just sit,
Yeah.
So I remember hearing gamers would, work out a lot because they need to sit for so many hours a day. So it's the same thing with musicians. So
yeah, and it is much easier to go out for walks in nature when when it's the sun shining outside, and I know people have like grounding mats and all different approaches and practices, but there's nothing like just going for a walk in the park with the trees, and so that's wonderful. So we're just sharing kind of other important practices that go along with the voice. Brilliant. Okay, so are you happy just to share? You don't need like an instrument. You're happy with what you have available.
I'm using I just have a tanpura on my phone, like a drone.
Okay.
So I'll sing a short a shanti mantra, a peace prayer.
Brilliant. I mean, and we've still got time. We've got so I'll just let you come to your natural end before we close. Okay. Thank you.
Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramaya sarve bhadrani pasyantu ma kaschit dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much. And for those that aren't aware, can you just mention what the drone instrument was that you were using?
Yes, so it's an electronic version of an instrument called a tanpura. A tanpura is the same shape as a sitar, and it has 4 or 5 strings, and it's plucked continuously to create this drone effect, and gives us the bass note for what we're singing.
Beautiful. That was so lovely.
Thank you.
Really, really lovely.
Thank you so much.
And always just singing from the heart. It's just so beautiful to hear your voice. And I'd like to thank you for coming and sharing your time with us today and talking about your projects and the work. I'd also like to thank you for all that you do. Just acknowledge and appreciate everything that you're putting out there. It's just so amazing, and also the collaborations that you have, just bringing it out in different ways, in different forms, so that's amazing. So thank you so much for all of that. And I'd like to also thank the viewers, whether you're tuning in live or whether you're watching the replay. This video will be available across my platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and also as a podcast on my website. And we ask that you, if you enjoyed this session, to subscribe or to follow across both of our platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and where you can find out more. And I'll be sharing Ranjana's links and bio in my podcast tab on my website, where you can listen to this again. The podcast will also be streamed on Apple and Spotify. So thank you so much, Ranjana, for joining. It was incredible today.
Thank you for having me.
Unlocking the power of the voice through singing is such an important important area. So we're going to leave it there, and I'm going to say thank you again, and everyone stay tuned. Thank you. Bye.